Is the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G worth buying in 2021? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. Hey everybody, this is Andre here covering for Kevin on the Kevin Breeze channel, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G. Now this is not to be confused with the regular Samsung Galaxy A51, as the A51 and the A51 5G are completely different phones. Now these days, you can get the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G unlocked for all major carriers. To get some more information on the pricing and availability and even more info about the phone itself, be sure to check the link in the description below. This link goes right to Samsung's website and they have a lot of trade deals on there that you're not going to be able to find anywhere else. Now this phone was released in April of 2020, so it's still relatively new. But what kind of value are we getting out of it in 2021? Well, we're about to find out. Now this phone has a 6.5-inch Super AMOLED display with a resolution of 1080p and a PPI of 405. The phone has an aspect ratio of 20:9 and a screen to body ratio of 87.2%. Really thin bezels here. Now there is a hole punch for the front facing camera, which I really like. And this camera is 32 megapixels. I've always been a big fan of the hole punch front facing cameras. A lot of the older phones and a lot of lower end ones as well have a water drop instead. And I really don't like the appearance of those ones, but the hole punch gives it a really nice modern look. And I think this type of design is going to age really well. Now this phone has 128 gigabytes of internal storage with micro SD card expansion. Comparing this phone to a phone like an iPhone, this phone actually starts out with more internal storage than the iPhone. And the iPhone starts out at like 64 gigabytes and it's a lot more expensive than this. And it doesn't even have the option to use a micro SD card to expand the storage. So technically, storage-wise, these phones are already providing more value than an iPhone. To give you a better idea of what this storage looks like, I have everything I use on a daily basis plus a lot of photos and videos downloaded onto this phone, and it's only taking up 29% of the storage. Now, as you can see, 11.5 gigabytes of photos and videos, plus the system memory and all of the apps that I have, that's no joke. That's a lot of storage. But at the same time, as a percent of the phone's total available storage, it's really not using that much. If you're doing a lot of things that require data storage, such as playing a game that's really big, or taking lots of photos and videos for content creation, or whatever you might be doing, having this much internal storage is definitely going to come in handy. Now there's no wireless charging on this phone, unfortunately, and that's definitely something that I would have liked to see, especially since this phone is really getting into more of the higher end range. It would have been really nice to see a feature like wireless charging. But at the same time, it's still a really specific feature that a lot of people don't really even use, so it's not that big a deal that it doesn't support it. On the bright side, there is a really good fingerprint scanner. Now, even these days with the newer smartphones, phones with a fingerprint scanner typically have them on the back of the phone. You see that in a lot of the older flagship phones, mid-level phones, entry-level phones, even high-end phones like the Google Pixel still have a fingerprint scanner on the back, usually around this area. But this phone actually has the fingerprint scanner on the screen itself. I really think this is a nice feature. It really gives you that modern digital feel, and I really like that, especially considering some phones like the newer iPhones don't even have fingerprint scanners at all. It's definitely nice to have one that's so advanced. Let's go ahead and give it a try now. There we go, let's try it one more time. As you can see, this is a really fast and responsive fingerprint scanner, and the placement of it is definitely convenient. Although it was still nice to have the fingerprint scanner placed on a decent spot on the back of the phone, I personally think that when it's placed on the front on the display, it leaves a lot less room for error, because with a digital fingerprint scanner, you're not going to have to worry about debris getting stuck in the interface and have it not work because of that. This phone also has Face Unlock, which can be really nice to use as well. So all in all, there are several options you can use to unlock the phone, and it's nice to be able to have a couple to choose from. Now taking a look at the camera setup, we do have a quad camera setup here. We have a 48 megapixel rear camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 5 megapixel depth sensing camera, and a 5 megapixel macro camera. Taking a look at the camera now, the image is very crisp and clear. And most likely, this video doesn't really do it justice. This camera is great. And if you press this button right here, you can go into ultra wide. And on this tab, you can go to macro mode right here. And then you can get the really close-up images. And of course, we have everybody's favorite portrait mode right here under live focus. This is the front-facing camera, of course, and we are in live focus mode right now. I am definitely impressed by the quality of this front-facing camera. Throughout the history of front-facing cameras, they've typically been a lot lower quality than the rear cameras of most phones. But the quality of this front-facing camera is really crisp, and I definitely wouldn't mind taking pictures with it. Definitely if you're using this phone for purposes like content creation or streaming or something where you really need a front-facing camera, this is really going to be a good option for you. Just doing a quick test of the video mode of the camera. We are shooting in 4K at 30 frames per second. Also keep in mind the audio quality. So that was the video mode of the camera. As I said in the video, it is shooting in 4K at 30 frames per second, which is a really good quality. Another thing I definitely want to point out about this phone's audio quality is that it's very crisp, and even at a higher volume like it was, it doesn't get distorted. A lot of phones, even the higher end ones, get a little fuzzy when you turn the volume up all the way, especially when loud sounds are playing. But this one didn't do any of that, and I can definitely appreciate that. If you use headphones or a speaker when you're consuming content, it's not really that big a deal. But me personally, I don't really like to use headphones or a speaker all the time, especially when I'm just quickly watching a YouTube video or if I'm listening to music while doing something real quick. It's not always convenient to get out a big speaker or to get headphones, so I like to use the phone speaker sometimes. And this can definitely be a problem when the phone's audio gets distorted at higher volumes because of a low quality speaker. With this phone, I really don't have to worry about that because the audio is still crisp and clear, even at a higher volume. Now, internally with this phone, we're getting 6 gigabytes of RAM with the Exynos 980 processor. Now, one thing to note is that this is the unlocked version of the phone. If you're getting it through a carrier, you might have a different processor and there might be a slight difference in performance. So be aware that this specifically, the 6 gigabytes of RAM with the Exynos 980 processor, is for the unlocked variant of the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G and not the ones through the carriers. That being said, I did run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone, and it has a single core score of 489 and a multi-core score of 1816. Now this is great. You're definitely going to get some strong numbers with this phone. If you're using this phone for moderate activities that require a good amount of processing power like photo and video editing, then it's definitely going to perform well for you. Now if you're doing higher performance activities, especially heavy gaming, then you might run into a little bit of an issue with it. But with 6 gigabytes of RAM, this phone should definitely be able to handle a lot. Now this phone's easily going to be able to handle basic activities as well. And if that's all you're doing and you don't think you're going to need to do more than that, then you might not want to be looking at this phone because this might be more than you need in that case. That being said, if you're doing activities that need moderate to higher processing power, then this phone is definitely worth looking at. For the battery, we have a 4500 milliamp hour battery that supports 15 watt fast charging. This is a really big battery that's going to be able to give you a lot of life and power. A lot of people who consider a phone like this are also looking at older flagship phones, and one thing to keep in mind when comparing this to an older flagship phone is the battery. Older flagship phones not only have slightly smaller batteries, if not significantly smaller depending on the age and the specific model, but this phone's battery is going to be a lot fresher than an older phone. Most of those older flagship phones have been used for a little bit at least, and they've been around for a while. So even if they're certified refurbished, their battery is definitely not going to last forever. The same, of course, goes for any phone, but this phone, being a very recent model, is definitely going to have a much fresher battery than a phone that's, say, made in 2017. Again, another thing to compare to the flagship phones is the fact that this phone runs on Android 10, whereas a lot of those older phones that you'd be getting in a similar price range to this, such as the Galaxy S8 or S9, are going to run on Android 8 or Android 9 instead of Android 10. And most older flagship phones are not supporting updates, so you're most likely not going to be able to get the newest version of Android. Now, if you're looking for a phone with similar processing power, which this definitely does have, and the latest version of Android, then this phone is definitely going to be a better option for you. Not only that, but it does have a lot of newer features. I know some of those older flagship phones don't have stuff like ultra-wide and macro cameras. So if you're using a phone for more content creation stuff as opposed to something like gaming that still requires a higher amount of processing power, then this phone might be a better option than those. On the other hand, if you just want processing power and are doing something like gaming that doesn't really rely on the features of the phone, then some of those older flagship phones do have a bit more processing power than this, so it really depends on the situation. Either way, both are definitely good options that are worth looking at. Now that we've gone over some of the specs of the phone, let's take a look at the hardware. So up top, we got the slot for the SIM card and micro SD card, as well as the noise canceling microphone right here. And then of course, our earpiece, it's really hard to see, it's skinny right in here. And then we have our hole punch front facing camera, which again, I'm a really big fan of this design. It looks really modern, really nice overall. At the bottom, we have a 3.5mm headphone jack, the USB-C charging port, the microphone, and the speaker. The left is clean, there's nothing going on here. And on the right, we have the volume up button, the volume down button, and the power button. On the back of the phone, we have our camera setup and our flash. There's a Samsung logo right here at the bottom. The back has a glossy finish, which does look nice, but the problem with this finish is that fingerprints really do show up on here in certain lighting. So just be aware of that. You're gonna have to be extra careful. All around, the phone is made of a really high quality material, and even though it's not a flagship phone, in some ways it does feel like one. It has nice weight to it. It really does feel good. And again, with the design, with the bezels being so thin, having that hole punch camera, I think this design is really gonna age well. I think that 5 years from now, it's not gonna seem like an old phone like some of those flagship phones that are around now. And now let's take a look at what's inside the box. We got some literature in here, a quick start guide, and some other booklets. There's a SIM card removal tool right here. There's a USB-C cable and a wall adapter. Now, in conclusion, is this phone worth buying in 2021? I definitely think this phone is worth buying in 2021. Whether or not it's the best choice for you really depends on your situation. If you really only use your phone for basic activities and just need a device that can do those things but still want the option to do other stuff if you want, then this is going to be a great choice because most likely it's going to provide a lot more power than you need. But at the same time, if you do want to do something like edit a video here and there real quick, take a really high quality photo, that sort of thing, then this is definitely going to be able to get everything you really would want out of a phone done for you. And really, if you're in that mid-range where you're looking for something that can do a lot of content creation, like taking lots of pictures, it really has the best features for those. And if you're doing more intense things like photo and video editing and some light gaming, then this is still gonna work out. If you're going into that higher range where you're constantly doing video editing or do gaming all the time, then you might wanna look at a higher end device like the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE. But as far as that mid-level, I think this phone is definitely perfect for that. If you're comparing it to the older flagship phones, again, it really comes into question what you're gonna be using the phone for. If it's more content creation than anything else, then I would definitely say this phone has the edge over those flagship models because you're gonna get a newer phone with a lot more features, a better quality camera, because over time, I've definitely noticed that cameras typically tend to get better and better as phones get newer, assuming that they're in an at least comparable range. But if you're gonna be doing something like gaming that doesn't really rely on the features of the phone itself, per se, if you don't want to go into the price realm of something like the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE or the Samsung Galaxy A51, because a lot of those older flagship phones, specifically something like the S8 or the S9 or the Note 9, they're going to have a bit higher processing power than this phone. Even though they're not going to have the same features on the camera or the latest version of Android, they're still going to have that processing power. So if you're doing something that doesn't really need the latest Android features or the latest camera, then something like that with a more powerful processor is most likely going to get the job done better. But still keep in mind that the battery is definitely going to be a factor. This battery is not only going to be a fresher battery than an older phone, but it's also a lot bigger than the average phone out there. A 4500 milliamp hour battery is definitely on the larger side. Might not be quite as large as those Motorola phones out there with 5000 milliamp hours, but it's still definitely a bigger battery. So if you're doing something intense, remember the battery is going to be powering that processor. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But overall, I do think that although there are lots of other options out there, the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G overall does provide great value in 2021. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.